Anglers Sports Center is located at 1456 Whitehall Road, Annapolis, Maryland, 21409. Anglers Sports Center began offering fishing lectures on Saturdays at 3 p.m. Today's lecture is on snakeheads, with an opportunity to sample some freshly cooked snakehead nuggets after the presentation.
So now we're going to get into the actual techniques, gear, and tackle.
Alrighty, so now we're going to start off because you fish for them differently in a couple different areas based on, like we said, first of all, it's mainly just like if you want to compare it to any kind of fishing, it will be to pretty much shallow water bass fishing, top water lures, weightless flukes and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to talk about this. So if you're fishing the Potomac areas, you're going to be fishing grass, all kinds of vegetation on the shoreline. So what you want to do if you're fishing from the shore, you pretty much want to kind of walk and move, because most of these snakeheads do not school up as much, or if at all. You're going to find one in one spot and you have to keep moving, hitting different pockets of grass or any kind of structure along the shoreline. So one of the best lures, or some of the best lures that you want to use during the early spring and throughout the summer will be topwater lures, because we're fishing a couple inches of water to maybe 4 foot of water. Some of the lures that I recommend to use are going to be pretty much buzz baits. If you're a bass fisherman, you've pretty much seen those before. They're almost like a spinner bait. The actual hook itself will stay underneath the water a couple inches underneath, and this guy just spins around and makes some noises over top of the water. And you want to kind of play with the speeds around any kind of structure, grass, wood, or rocks, and just run this through there. And don't slow it down too much, because it will eventually fall under and get all the mucky stuff on the actual hook. Something that's a little bit better if you don't want to use that and that it actually works really well is going to be just a hollow body frog. There's tons of them in the market. There's smaller ones, bigger ones. One of the things I'm going to tell you from my experience is that when you're fishing topwater for snakeheads, a lot of people are going to tell you that they're super aggressive. They just smash lures, and they're really aggressive, and they take them down. And they're actually really lousy topwater fish. Like when you're fishing topwater, sometimes I have this frog come in next to this piece of grass and actually have a snakehead blow up literally a couple inches behind it instead of actually hitting the lure. So sometimes you're gonna miss a couple of them, but as long as you don't, if let's say I throw this bait over top of these snakehead, if you're and be a really good bait. But I wouldn't recommend using this in heavy cover because of the treble hooks. It has 2 sets of treble hooks. You're gonna pick up all the trash around it, and it kind of becomes a mess. But essentially, if you're fishing like the Potomac area and you're fishing, or any other kind of shallow water area that has a lot of grass, you want to cast these lures right in top of that grass, because those fish are going to be laying inside the grass or in the edges of the grass, where they're going to be sitting there just waiting for something to come by and hit it. Now, the other thing that we're going to talk about is that these guys are really aggressive, but just like any other fish, when there's a cold front or some sort of system that moves through, they can actually become sluggish. And I've had times where I've seen snakeheads myself and sight cast it to them, and they will not hit anything except live bait. So one of the things that a lot of people do is minnows, big bull minnows, or actually small bluegills. Keep them alive, and if you see them or if you're around grass areas, you can actually live line them for snakehead. A small size like 1/0 J hook or circle hook is going to work great for that. Just hook them right through the mouth and cast them around the edges of the grass, and that's going to work. Especially in the early spring, like right now, it's a great time to use live bait, because those snakeheads are going to be laying in the mud, just kind of doing nothing because it's really cold right now. And you can still catch them, you just have to slow down your presentation, and live bait's pretty much the best way to catch them this time of the year in the Potomac and also Blackwater. Blackwater is really big into a lot of people use live bait in that area, and the reason being is because you can catch all kinds of stuff there too. But besides that, you fish Blackwater a little bit different because you don't have as much grass, like actual grass in the water. You have to fish literally the shorelines where there's structure. So when you go in there, there's a couple patches of grass, but you have to fish mainly based on the tide. So when the tide goes up, if you guys ever been there, if not, there's pretty much like banks of grass in the actual shoreline. When the tide goes down, it's pretty much no water on the grass. But once the tide goes up, you'll start seeing the snakeheads actually move up in the actual shoreline. And that's when you can cast this frogs, whopper ploppers, or even live bait works great for that area. You fish it pretty much kind of like just like the Potomac, topwater lures, and you can also use spinner baits and chatter baits are going to be some of the bigger baits, subsurface baits that you will want to use for snake. Where there's not a lot of stuff on the bottom, or like I was talking about the Tucson River. When you go upstream, it's fast moving water. You're going to be able to cast these guys kind of close to structure, like pieces of wood or rocks, and slow roll them on the bottom. 3/8 to ½ ounce from the spinner baits. Bright colors usually work the best, and also chatter baits are going to be some of the best lures for them. Some other baits that you can also use for them are going to be small crankbaits, just like if you were bass fishing around deeper water for this time of the year, early in the spring, and in the summer, just a regular spook. Side to side bait like this is going to work great for them. So those are some of the items that I like to use on that. Excuse me. And also some soft plastics, paddle tails mainly, weightless flukes are going to be some of the better ones if you're fishing extremely shallow water. I usually Texas rig them to not get them snagged or keep the grass off of them with a 4/0 offset hook. And I can show all you guys this stuff once we're done so you can see it up close. But yeah, 4/0 weightless, no weight Texas rig on a fluke or a paddle tail. Usually works great for them too. So now let's go into some of the line. I prefer to use braided line just because it cuts through the grass really well. I like to go as light as 30 and as high as 60 at times if I'm fishing really heavy cover. If you want to stay right in between, 40 pounds should do it, but there's times when if you're fishing heavy cover you have to use 65 or 50 just to get them out of there, because if you don't, you're gonna lose them. You hook them and they go straight into the grass, and sometimes there's just no way to get them out of there. So once you hook into one, you really kind of want to get them out fast on the first few cranks, because if not, they're gone. Excuse me. Now I'm going to show you some of the rods here, and this is more of your personal preference here. If you're using a bait caster, I recommend just, high gear, big caster, 7-to-3 gear ratio, so you pick up a lot of line. Depending on where you're fishing, if fishing pretty much open water, you can go as high as, a 7.3 foot in length rod or shorter. Spinning rods will be a medium heavy, 6.6 to 7 foot on the rods with a 3,000 size spinning reel, and same thing, 30 to 40 pound braided line on this will work great. Yep, and so pretty much.
Do you use a leader of any kind, fluorocarbon, or do you just go straight braid to the lure?
Most of the time, you go straight to the lure. Unless you're using live bait, sometimes in semi-clear water, which for snakehead, I don't think it really matters a lot of the time. You will use a short monofilament leader, which it can be for anywhere from like 25 to 40 pound mono on that. I wouldn't really use fluoro for snakehead since they're more of a reaction strike fish. So pretty much a straight braid, or if you're using live bait, 25 to 40 pound monofilament will be your leader size for that on the small 1/0 J hook. Yep. And then some of the other stuff you actually want to carry that you don't want to forget about is going to be actual pliers, because it's really hard for you to open their mouth. So pliers are a must, and some sort of thing to actually get the hook out, because half the time once they bite, you hook them, you can barely get their mouths open. So you want pliers and some sort of grip tool to actually get the hook out, because it's just they're nasty little things where once they close their mouth, it takes a few minutes to get the hook out. Filleting knife, if you're going to kill them, so you can cut their heads off, or something to knock them out with. It's going to be, a piece of wood or something just to knock them out, because they're pretty crazy fish.
So anyway, just wrapping up kind of what Alex has been talking about here. Obviously, we're talking about lots of baits, making a lot of noise, but they can be fished in shallow water, especially weedless stuff. I know there's about 10,000 other lures we've been talking about in other areas, so we definitely would love you guys to come up. We can talk about different areas of the Potomac, Blackwater, and different kind of lures we like to use as well. But I think overall that pretty much wraps up the whole seminar. We are going to have fish, I think, up front for everybody to try. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for coming out today and listening to us talk about snakehead. And definitely talk about